minutes.
Yeah, Dory, that's Patrick Pashal that needs his change. I see you. Yeah, I see you nodding. Okay.
Jim, I think we have a lot of people. I think we could get started.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the City of Hyattsville's February Business Roundtable. Just to cover some of the high notes, most of today's discussion and presentation is going to be regarding developing a business continuity plan. So we have a terrific speaker with us today who very knowledgeable in the area, and it's one of those areas that we've received pretty consistent feedback that was an area that some of our business owners wanted covered in terms of topics. Mr. Camp is with us. He's going to go into a great amount of detail. We also have our new Chief of Police, Chief Towers, with us today. He'll introduce himself to the community and provide a CAT team update. Patrick Bashal is with us. Many of you know Patrick as a former city council member. He's leading our COVID-19 pandemic relief efforts, and he's going to be here today to talk a little bit about ARPA. And then we'll have our community development team provide some updates on BRE sustainability plan, some of our economic development programming, and development updates. So Before we get started, certainly many of you are aware of the loss last week with Mayor Kevin Ward dying by suicide. And to those who have ever met Kevin or knew him well, certainly he had the presence to light up a room, and our community loved him. He loved it back. Services for Mayor Ward are scheduled for tomorrow. Certainly encourage anyone interested in paying their respects to watch the services online. We'll have that. We'll have a link for those services. As you're aware, seating at United Methodist Church is going to be pretty limited. It will be for family, dignitaries, city council members, and members of city staff. Certainly, if you know anyone seeking support for services for this loss, or may need support services related to other issues, please know there are services available. Organizations that we've worked with have helped city staff and our community members cope with the loss of Mayor Ward. Wherever you are, certainly some of you or your employees may need assistance. Feel free to reach out. We have Pastor Stephen Price with us, and Corrine Lewis. Dory, do you want to promote both, and so they could introduce themselves to the folks, and we can share their contact information in the chat. So if anybody needs assistance, please feel free to seek that out. I'll drop that in the chat right now while Dory's promoted both of them.
And for the panelists, we think we've updated your names, but just drop in the chat to us if we need to make any corrections.
Mr. Price, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Pastor Stephen. I'm pastor for Baptist Church here in Hyattsville, and a community chaplain working mostly with our police department. Good morning, Lieutenant Ratty. It's good to see you. And good morning, Chief, as well. I also work with the mobile crisis team. The new service that has been set up, and Corrine Lewis is here. She is a colleague there. We are available if you have someone in crisis. Please call the 211 line, and they will connect you to the mobile crisis team or to whatever other services you need. I just want to say, I know y'all have got a very busy schedule today. I'll just say what I usually say when I come to these. Everybody grieves differently, and however you are grieving is okay. Don't try to think that you ought to be at some stage somewhere. Things come and go, and you will get through this. We will all get through this together. In the meantime, please take care of yourself. The fact that the social support is here this morning is one of the primary things that helps people heal from grief. The second is whatever your spiritual supports are, whatever your higher power is, connect with that. And at the risk of sounding like my mother, the other things you need to do are basic health things. Get enough sleep, eat well, drink lots of water, and moderate alcohol. Get a little exercise if you can, and be gentle with yourself, because this is a process and we will get through it together. Corrine, would you like to add anything to that? You're on mute, Corrine.
Thank you, Pastor Price. I think you spoken volumes, and I just like to reiterate what you've said, and that is be gentle with yourself, right? What we understand is that it's no one's fault. This is a part of life, and loss is a part of life. And as Pastor Price has said, we will all get through it. I feel like but time heal.
Corrine has unfortunately frozen. But thank you for inviting us to be here. We appreciate the offer to share with you. And unless you need us here, we will say goodbye now and let y'all get on with what looks like a very busy morning.
Thank you both, and we do appreciate your support and your being here today.
Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So we do have a busy agenda, and we're we are still wanting to incorporate questions and answers, and so our speaker here, we're going to give a good deal of time to presenting business continuity planning. For folks who have attended previously, we have a Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. So we encourage you, if you have any questions, try to keep it on topic, obviously. What we'll do is we'll let the speaker know about those questions. And if he covers them, then we'll sort of cross them out. And then if he doesn't cover them, once he's done presenting, we'll go back and we'll cover those questions to the best of our ability. If we run out of time, it may be some follow-up on terms of Q&A, but try to refrain from using the chat function for questions. One, it's difficult to track, and two, it's really more for the operation of the meeting. We have some additional interactive stuff at the end, so I think there will be a good amount of time to share some ideas. So with that, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Dory Estrada. Some folks have met her recently. Dory is our Community and Economic Development Coordinator, along with coordinating our roundtable discussions. She manages our corridor investment program and commercial facade programs, parking day, things like that. So I just wanted to introduce Dory to our folks, and then she'll go ahead and introduce our speaker.
So much, Jim. Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you all online today. And yes, I'm really looking forward to today's session. So I have the pleasure of introducing our main speaker, Jack Camp. He has been a public affairs specialist with the Small Business Administration's Office of Disaster Assistance since 2006. In this work, he's promoting the SBA's disaster loan program to the media, community, businesses, civic and community organizations, and elected officials. And he responds to disasters that occur in the territory that is the 27 states east of the Mississippi, plus Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And Jack is best known for his ability to explain the process of federal disaster funds in layman's terms. He's been a public affairs specialist with extensive knowledge on disaster loans, and he has been with the SBA since 1985. Jack got his start in finance at the Bank of the South in Atlanta, and he worked there for 8 years, and he's a graduate of Georgia State University with a degree in finance. So Jack, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. And let me go ahead and share my screen. And we'll get started. Okay. Yes, I'm here today to talk to you about business continuity planning. And the slides I'm going to show you, they are from our headquarters. It actually covers more than just continuity planning preparedness. It also covers recovery and mitigation. I'm not going to spend any time really on recovery. I'll talk a little bit about that. And I'll touch on mitigation a little bit. I do want to also present some information from some other another website that is I find very useful, and I hope that you do too. So let me just get started and go on to with preparedness. And of course, I assume that you're here, you're interested in our subject, business continuity, basically disaster preparedness. And so I don't have to tell you that, it's not that disasters happen. And, one of the big parts of disaster preparedness is knowing what your risks are, assessing your risk. The map here, it talks about various risks, earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes. A big one that we've all gone through the last 2 years is the pandemic that knows no borders. And there are also man-made events. The federal government can step in disasters and help you out and offer assistance to you. Sometimes it's low cost, sometimes it's no cost. And that's very good, but the federal government isn't here in all cases. So it's really up to you to prepare for a disaster event. And just to let you know, I will touch on a little bit. There is an ongoing disaster declaration in Maryland. Actually, the filing deadline for physical damages is already expired. That was back in December, but Hurricane Ida came through Maryland. You did not have a whole lot of activity in this, but there was a small disaster declaration for Anne Arundel and Cecil and Montgomery counties. It was more impactful to the north of here, of course, in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. I actually spent about 3.5 months in New Jersey responding to this disaster, and we made a total of close to $500 million in loans as a result of this disaster. Now, one thing that is still available for the businesses, if you were impacted by Hurricane Ida, you might want to consider applying for an economic injury loan. They're available through July 18th. They are available to small businesses in Prince George's County. These are working capital loans to small businesses to help you pay for ordinary and necessary operating expenses that you can't cover as a direct result of a disaster, but would have been able to pay had the disaster not occurred. So if you find yourself in that situation, would recommend that you take a look at it. The interest rates are 2.855% for for-profit businesses and 2% for nonprofit organizations. So, and the loan terms are up to 30 years. So it's a very reasonable way to finance your losses. Just throw that in there so you know, since it is going on. And why is it important to prepare for disaster? We've touched on the fact that disasters happen. Well, because history shows us that 25% of businesses that have a substantial impact from a disaster don't open again. 25, that's a 1 in 4 chance that your business isn't going to survive. And that's not really good odds. You don't want to leave that to, you've got too much invested in your business. So, you want to tilt the odds in your favor. How can you make sure that you're one of the 3 and 4 that survive? Well, that is through business preparedness. And I'm going to go over a pretty basic plan and show you some tools that are available to you to help you with that, so that you can be one of these 3 and 4 and not the 4th one. So let's get down to it. There's basically 6 steps. And I'm going to go over these a little bit. Establish a communications plan. Protect your vital information. Review your insurance coverage. Take a look at your facilities and operations planning. Assess your needs and your weaknesses and your threats. I'm going to introduce you to some business preparedness resources that are available to you. Take advantage of these. And then once you put together a plan, practice that plan. Share it with your staff, your employees, your significant other. If people aren't aware of what your plan is, then it's not really a plan. And when you test your plan, you can improve it, make it better, figure out what you left out. And so that's a real critical part of this. So let's start on, we'll go to establishing a communications plan. So communications plan is key to your post-disaster recovery strategy. And I know I got some comments that due to COVID, a lot of people lost a lot of sales. This is something that's quite common in a disaster. You're going to lose sales. And they talked about how marketing is a crucial part of maintaining a business during a disaster or a disaster recovery period. And certainly this is, a part of it. Your communications plan involves this. But I mean, there's more to a communications plan than that. You also have to look at your employees. You have to look at your vendors, certainly your customers. How do you communicate with local authorities? You want to have lists of contact information for all of these important people, your media, utility companies, emergency responders. And all of this, one of the important things for all of this plan is to go back to it periodically and keep it updated. So at least once a year, you need to break it out, dust it off, practice it, and update it. But make sure that other people in your organization are aware of the plan. I recommend that in a disaster, if you're substantially affected by a disaster, name someone to be a point of contact. It might be you. You may be the point of contact, but make sure that somebody is your designated go-to person with that for answers about your organization and your business. And of course, you want to let the public know through marketing that, hey, I'm still open, or when am I going to be open? If your business is destroyed, well, we're rebuilding the business and we're going to be open on March 31st, or, whenever you're going to get back in business. Let the public know that. Don't let them forget about you, because they will forget about you. And then, of course, sign up for alerts from FEMA and local officials. Your local emergency management agencies, definitely get in touch with them. Their websites have lots of wonderful information, crucial information that is helpful. FEMA does too, and talk about that a little later on. But get to know your local emergency managers. Okay, the second step in preparing a plan is to protect vital information. Excuse me. Arrange for off-site backup, storage of vital records and information. Back up your computer data. Have professional information protection, antivirusware, things of that nature, and really keep this up to date and go back to it and do whatever you have to do to protect your data. I mean, what is important data? You want to have, access certainly to important documents like deeds, leases, marriage license, divorce settlements, wills, trusts, all of these important legal documents. You want to have good access to them. Also insurance documents, know how to get in touch with your insurance agent. That's probably one of the first calls you're going to want to make if there is a physical disaster or, at your place of business. Consider how, and like I say, consider having someone come in and assess how well you are documenting and protecting your information. If someone gets into your computer system and wipes out your receivables or payables information, it's going to be hard to collect your receivables or to pay your bills going forward into the future. So, make sure that you've got a plan in place to avoid this. Second thing, the next step is your insurance. Like I mentioned earlier, you can't count on the government to come in and solve all your problems. I mean, we do a lot. With COVID, the SBA, I was just floored by what we did. We had done SBA's been in the disaster loan business since 1953. We've made tens of billions of dollars of loans over the years, over 50 billion, I think, coming up to COVID. We did over $329 billion in COVID idle loans and over $790 billion in PPP loans. A lot of that was forgiven. Just here in Maryland, we approved over $6 billion in our EIDL loans, COVID idle loans. And of that, we had targeted and supplemental advances of over $145 million that didn't have to be repaid. The government opened up its purse strings and put a lot of money out on the streets. But it's not always going to be there. And it's not always appropriate for the government to come in. And so, and especially for businesses, when FEMA comes out, they have grants, but they don't have grants for businesses. If you're in a disaster that's declared by the president and FEMA comes to town, when you call up, they're going to send you to SBA to ask for a loan. Now, our loans are low interest, long rate, long term. That's a really good deal. We'll cover up to 100% of your uninsured losses. But it is still a loan. You have to repay it. So your first line of defense to avoid that is insurance. Consider business interruption insurance. Consider flood insurance. Now, flood insurance is typically not included in your normal insurance policy, but everybody can buy flood insurance. You don't have to be in a flood zone. That's a misconception that people have. In fact, if you're not in a flood zone, your flood insurance is going to be much less expensive. And you think, well, I'm not in a flood zone. I don't need flood insurance. Maybe, maybe not. Most flood claims that are paid out by the National Flood Insurance Program every year are for people who are not in a flood zone. I mean, how is that possible? Well, a flood zone, all that means is that the chances are maybe 1 in 100 or more that you're going to be flooded in any particular year. You could be flooded 2 years in a row, but in any particular year, you got a 1% or more greater chance of being flooded. But you could have less than 1%, and that's not in a flood zone. So you could still be a victim of flooding. And I mean, it's a big country. And like I say, most flood claims every year are for people who are not in a specified flood hazard area. So consider flood insurance. And if you're fortunate enough to not be in a flood zone, you're going to get a discount on the premiums. Keep your records up to date. Become friends with your insurance agent. It's not just an expense that you have to incur. Get to know them, talk to them. Try to talk to them once a year. Go over what's happening with your business. Has your business changed? Have you bought new facilities, new equipment, stuff that's expensive? I mean, maybe there's been an increase in crime in your area, and you need to talk to them about what your risks are. They'll be a very good source of information on what risk you and the people in your community are facing. So get to know them. Keep good records. Take pictures. Keep receipts. Certainly. If you got a vital piece of equipment for your business, I would definitely keep all the information on the specs and costs and the vendor up to date, and keep a copy secured someplace off my business site, so that if something happened to that equipment, A, you'd be able to document it to your insurance company, and B, you'd be able to replace it. So, keep your records up to date, because this will be crucial for your insurance company to help settle your claim with you. Videotape is always a good idea. Walk around, take pictures of your business before the disaster, and certainly after the disaster too. Have before and after pictures. That's always a good thing to do. So facilities and operations planning. What do you do if your business had to close for several weeks or months? If it's all possible, you want to develop a plan to stay in operation if your business place is not usable or accessible. We saw during the pandemic a lot of restaurants, for example, start serving people outdoors. Certainly they became more reliant on carry out to go orders. And it's fascinating how society is changed. I'm from Georgia. I don't know if you can tell from my accent, but I still go to the restaurants a lot. But one of the things I notice is that nowadays there's just a steady stream of people coming in doing carry out orders. I don't know if it'll ever go back to being quite as much for in-person dining. That's not really on. Does that kind of sort of, business continuity? It shows how businesses have adapted, but it also shows how our society's been changed perhaps forever by this pandemic. Take a look at the internal and the external functions of your business and determine what you need to do to stay open. Can some people work from home? Can they work off-site? Maybe you have an off-site warehouse somewhere where a lot of your activities can take place. Maybe you can obtain alternate activities, but what exactly would it take to stand your business up somewhere else? And how would you go about doing that? This next one, it's cost a little bit, but to the extent you can do it, keep extra supplies of hard to replace items at an off-site location, or at a minimum, like I mentioned earlier, know how to replace them. If you've got an important piece of equipment, where do you go to buy that equipment? What exactly is it? What's the name, brand, and serial number, to it? How much is that going to cost you? Is there an alternative vendor? And the last thing they've got on here is to consider a backup generator, especially if you've got perishable items. Though, generators, I don't know if you've been in a disaster where the power's been off long term. Generators aren't made to run day in, day out for a month. When I was down in the Virgin Islands after Hurricane Maria, and a lot of people had generators. There were generators all over the island, and they were constantly running. But the smart people ran them no more than about 8 hours a day, because if you ran them all the time, you'd burn them up. But still, 8 hours of power a day, you might be able to keep your doors open. And, you might be able to take care of some important things. Now, I'm going to introduce some business preparedness resources. And the first one, of course, is ready.gov. This is basically FEMA's website, and they've got a ton of good information there. And like I said earlier, get to know FEMA, visit their website, and if you go to FEMA.gov, they have links to get to ready.gov. Of course, ready.gov is pretty easy to remember too. But they have information on developing a plan. But then there's another one here, and I'm gonna step away from my slideshow here for a minute. DisasterSafety.org to take you there. They have a program. It's called Open for Business, OFB-EZ, and it's for businesses. And I just want to show this to you. So bear with me. Let's see. Hold on for just 1 second. My screen did not go to, okay, here I go. This is what I planned to show you. Okay, this is DisasterSafety.org. This is the Insurance Institution for Business and Home Safety. And they've got a ton of information here. And one of the things I want to show you is here under business protection, disaster planning with OFB-EZ.
Pardon me, John, I think you need to reshare screen. We're still seeing the slideshow presentation.
Oh, do I? I apologize. Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, so let me just go back to their homepage, and if I lose you again, let me know. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, okay. So this is DisasterSafety.org's homepage. This is SBA partners with these people, so I can talk about them. And one of the things that they have here that I think is a wonderful tool is a disaster planning with OFB-EZ, which stands for Open for Business Easy. And if you go visit that part of their website, they have a toolkit here, okay? And there's a couple of things here. There's a master checklist. This is a Word document, or you can get the PDF also that you can go through, and it has a step-by-step list of things for you to consider. The other thing, the entire toolkit, this includes the master checklist, but it also goes into a great deal of detail on putting together a continuity plan, a disaster preparedness plan. And I strongly recommend that you consider taking a look at this. Most people, there's going to be a lot of stuff they talk in here that won't apply to you. And you're going to have some things that might be unique to your business that they don't talk about. But by going through something like this, you're going to consider things that you might not have thought of, and, everybody's situation is different. I was down in Florida a few years back and doing a talk like this. And I said, okay, what kind of risk do you have? And, we're in Florida. I'm thinking hurricanes, floods, tornadoes. First thing this lady said was lightning. I'm like, oh, wow, that's right. We're in mid-Florida. This is the lightning capital of the world. And so, there's a whole set of, that's their risk. So that's something they have to plan for. But this book here, like I said, it goes through it does a deep dive into a lot of the things that I'm talking about here today. There's no way I could cover everything in the amount of time that I've got to talk to you, but they do. And I strongly recommend it. So that's at disastersafety.org. Okay, I'll go back to my slide here. And let's see, oops, it took me back. Okay, so there's that. And like I said, ready.gov, go visit there. Go visit your local emergency manager's website. They're certainly going to have a lot of information on the risk that typical business or homeowner faces in your area. So definitely take advantage of what they have to offer you, and then consider these other sources. And the final step is test your plan. The plan's not good if nobody knows what your plan is. So share it with your employees, sit down on a regular basis, at least once a year, get it out, dust it out, off, read over it. Consider doing a tabletop exercise. What if? You can build into your day-to-day organization. Maybe once a month, once every 6 weeks, you're having a meeting with your employees. Say, okay, there's a fire. How are we getting out of the building? You do fire drills, but things like that. What do we do if we all of a sudden our computers go down and we're the victim of a ransomware attack? What are the steps that we're going to take? Just kind of surprise them. But certainly at least once a year, go through your disaster plan. What you want to do is you want to test it. You want to assess it. How did it work? Did you consider things? Has something changed since you put it together? Maybe you put it together and Jim Chandler was like, you're going to be your point of contact, but Jim Chandler got a job and moved to Washington, D.C. So he's not around to be your point of contact anymore. So you need to update your plan. And, things like that happen. Maybe you bought another piece of equipment. Now you need to, if I go out of business and my widget maker over there breaks down, my brand new widget maker, I can't buy the old one anymore. I got to figure out how to get the new one. So you want to have up-to-date information on it, and keep it relevant. Okay. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about mitigation here. Disaster mitigation it's a part of continuity planning, but this is where you spend the money. And it can be expensive, but research shows that for every dollar you spend on mitigation, you can save on average $6 in damages. So, you know, it can be expensive, but you really want to think about it. You know, insurance, it's not, you don't buy as much, you shouldn't be considering how much insurance can I afford to buy. The question is, how much insurance do I need? How much could I afford to do without it? And, you know, maybe you do a little bit more. And mitigation's the same way. You know, there may be something that you can do to mitigate your damages in the future. Certainly, if you're doing major upgrades to your facilities or something, building back smarter and stronger might help you in insurance costs. Let's say you're in a flood zone and you're able to elevate your facilities above the base floodplain. Maybe your insurance agent can give you a break on your insurance premium. So that might be good. Even that might save you a little, get you a little bit of your money back. You know, and there's a lot of things that you can do. It doesn't need to cost a fortune. Sometimes things are very cheap. You know, for example, if you're building a facility and on the lower level, you decide you want to put your electrical outlets up high at eye level instead of down on the floor, which is typical. Maybe that, you know, would be the difference in saving damage to your electrical systems in the event of a flood. You know, that raising utilities might be another thing you could do. These things can be cheap, relatively speaking. So, you know, we talk about the risk that you might face, flood, wildfire, wind, earthquake. And here we put down a lot of examples of things that you could do to mitigate your losses in the event of one of these things. Of course, these aren't everything. I know that one of the people provided a question about safety and security. That is certainly something that you can mitigate for. You know, I mean, disaster preparedness, if you live in a high crime area, if you notice crime increasing in your area, then maybe you want to take a look at your security system. Maybe add some more cameras. You know, talk to your insurance agent. What can you do? What should you do to protect your facilities? You know, increasing lighting. There may not be adequate street lighting, but maybe you could add some lighting, put some motion detectors out behind your building or something to keep, you know, in case someone goes back there. But there's a lot of things that you can do, and just and think about it. You know, just consider where you live. You know, everything, there's a risk. Everything, you know, earthquakes. The map I showed earlier, you don't have earthquakes in Maryland that much, but it's not totally unheard of. A few years back, there was an earthquake and damaged the Washington Monument. It was closed for several years. So these things happen. Though earthquakes are probably a low margin item for Maryland, but certainly I think that if I were building a structure, I would, you know, take that into consideration at a bare minimum. You're more at risk probably for wind or flood. And I think, you know, flood's probably the biggest thing that you need to be careful about, though everybody has to worry about fire. Now, the website that the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, their website, they have a couple of programs on mitigation. I didn't really show you those, but it's there at the same site. They have one that is for homes and one that is for businesses. And you may, depending on your insurance, some insurance companies participate that if you have a certified fortified home, for example, or fortified business, they might be able to give you a break on your insurance premium. But even if they can't, they have a lot of information on the site about things that you can do to build back stronger and better, and to harden your facilities to reduce the chances for losses. And it's the same deal. I couldn't talk about everything, but I recommend that you go there. In addition to going to ready.gov, FEMA has a lot of information also, and I'm sure they have a lot of sources. I'm a big fan of the Insurance Institute because we do partner with them from SBA, and as a result, I've kind of gone around their website and taken a look at a lot of the things that they've had, and I've used a lot of them for myself. For example, I recently replaced the roof of my home, and I went to their website. They have a big write-up on what you can do to build back a better and stronger roof, things that you need to look at and consider. So there's a lot of good information there. I recommend it. Then finally, I want to talk about some of our resource partners. The SBA works with the Small Business Development Council. Every state has something like this. Some states, they have a different name for them, but they're typically tied to your local university system, and they have either free or very low cost counselors that are available for you, and they're a wonderful bunch of people. There's also, and now SBDCs, they are a state organization. They're chartered by SBA, partially funded by SBA, but that is a state-run organization. These other organizations are tied directly to SBA, the Women's Business Center, SCORE, and the Veterans Business Outreach Centers. These are all excellent sources of assistance that you can get for your business continuity planning. I recommend that you take advantage of them. They can give you information on how to stay in operation, developing operational, financial, or marketing plans. I know that is a great concern to some of you. Considering alternative sources of revenue. That is certainly something that you, as part of your continuity planning, I meant to talk about that, but when you look at your business information systems, you need to also evaluate your financial situation, to consider how you would respond financially if a disaster occurred, because insurance doesn't cover everything, and it's not going to write a check on day one typically. So what are your backup plan? How are you going to do it? They can also help you identify ways to reduce costs and give you great ideas to update your management and style and things. And so with that, I will open it up to questions if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much, Jack. It's uncomfortable but necessary to plan for the worst case scenario. So thank you for laying this out in such explainable, clear terms to everyone here today. And I think, as Jim mentioned, this topic had come up even before the pandemic as a topic of interest for our community, because as you said, these types of events are going to become more frequent in the future. So yes, please, everyone who is attending, feel free to type your questions in the chat. I'm sorry, in the Q&A feature. Maybe I can get us started with one question from my side, which is, You mentioned, when there's a natural disaster, FEMA sends people to the SBA who are looking for financial assistance. I wanted to ask what the timeline is typically for people to receive assistance in the form of a small business loan.
Well, the first step is, of course, you have to apply for the loan. And typically, from the date of application, we are trying to get people an answer within about 2 weeks. So, yeah.
Great, that's a very quick timeline. Yeah. We had another question from our city planner, Taylor Roby, who isn't able to type it in the chat, but she's asking if you could share any of the SBA resource partner organizations that are specific to Maryland. Do you happen to know, or is it better that people go to the resources that you mentioned earlier?
Okay. I would say go to sba.gov and look at up in the upper right-hand corner. They have local resources. Okay, and from there you can put in your zip code. You can identify the local district office there in Maryland. It's in Baltimore. I apologize. I didn't prepare and have that information in front of me, but it is available there on the website under local resources. They also can hook you up with the SBDCs in Maryland, the Women's Business Center, Veterans Business Outreach Center, SCORE. All of our resource partners are available there.
Well, thank you.
John, thank you. This is Jim Chandler. That was very helpful. A quick question. You mentioned sort of refreshing some of that information for businesses and kind of go through a schedule. And I know it's going to vary for each business. I think certainly having that sort of annual check-in with the employees is probably very helpful. But for businesses, your typical business to sort of do a check over some of their information, what advice would you give to them in terms of frequency?
I would say really at least once a year. And then again, also whenever there's a major change to your business, if you move to new facilities or you buy new equipment that very expensive new equipment, it becomes an integral part of your organization. Maybe there's a change in the world around you. Certainly with the onset of the pandemic, that changed the way everybody operated. So that would be a good time to go take a look at it and see, if you noticed that crime was increasing in your community, maybe you need to go take a look at your security systems. So, certainly on a regular basis based on the calendar, and then again, based on your personal circumstances.
Thank you.
So anyone in our audience, please type your questions in the Q&A for Jack. Maybe just one other question from my side. You were also saying, budget not for what insurance you can afford, but how much it will, cost you to stay open. In terms of flood insurance, do you have an average that a small business should think about budgeting for, or is there like an ideal threshold for that?
Well, I think, there are limits on what National Flood Insurance covers. For example, they typically will write a policy per structure, and there'll be limits for that. I forget off the top of my head what the limits are. Buildings aren't cheap, so I would look at covering up to 100% of the cost of the building if I could. up to the maximum amount of insurance offered, and same thing for your contents, because it really doesn't take much water to do a ton of damage. Many years ago, I visited a house in Chicago, and it was actually the highest house on the block. Of course, Chicago's pretty flat, but this guy was up. However, the culverts outside of his home got blocked. They had a tremendous amount of rain. His house was on a slab. The back of the house was about an inch or two lower than the front half of the house. And so he was sitting there on his couch watching TV, he'd gone to sleep. He woke up, put his foot down on the floor, and he was in water. The water just got up to the level of where it was even with the front of the house. So he had about an inch or two in the back of the house. It made the carpet wet on the front half of the house and kind of splashed around a little bit in the puddle in the back half. But that water got into his walls, got into his insulation, and wicked all the way. It is a 2-story home. He had to replace all of the sheetrock, all of the cabinetry, all of the door framing in the entire house. This was back in the 80s. It was about a $40,000. It was just a regular single family home, and it cost him $40,000 to replace it back then. So that will give you an idea of what water can do to you.
Yep, very important. Well, I hope our business leaders who are on today's webinar will take Jack's advice and really make use of the resources that he outlined in this presentation. Thank you so much for giving this input. I think this is a really important topic at large, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. And I did put my contact information up here for disaster assistance. And I do have if you want, I can share a copy of this presentation for you. It also has more information. I didn't show you the whole thing, but it has information about SBA's disaster assistance program, in addition to the information about preparedness and mitigation. And if you want to share it with the attendees, that's fine.
Wonderful. Yep, we will definitely do that. Thank you. All right, so Jim, I will go ahead and maybe before we transition, launch our poll quickly.
Please do.
So, yep, for everyone on the call, on your screen in just a moment, you'll be seeing a 5-question survey. If you could just answer those for us really quickly, this is very, very helpful in informing us how to, kind of improve on our programs and services, and also help understand how many of you are interested in taking part in some of the opportunities for grants and events like Parking Day that we are planning for later this year. So, that's coming up. If you can just answer the questions on your screen, we would really appreciate it. Everyone, a minute or two to do that, and I will pull up the slides again. Okay, looks like a 50-50 split so far as people's understanding about our businesses and research supports. We'll be speaking about some of them in just a few minutes.
All right. While everyone is finishing off the survey, joining us today is Interim Mayor Robert Crosland. I think most of you have met Mr. Crosland over the years, and so want to take a moment to say a few words, and then he will go ahead and introduce our Chief of Police, Jared Towers. So, Mr. Interim Mayor, floor is yours.
Let me just say hi to all the folks here. This is my first time attending this meeting. It's very interesting. I look forward to attending more often and working with all of you into the future. We do have Chief Towers on now, I think, and some of you may not have met him, but this is an opportunity, and he's going to say a few words. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. I just wanted to swing in and introduce myself. I'd actually, upon my arrival in October, met with our community action team and their commander, our special services commander, Lieutenant Ratty, and asked if we had an organization where, if we tracked and had a relationship with our business owners in the city, and what we could do to build upon the existing relationship to ensure that we're working together to address your needs and ultimately serve our community. A lot of the things that I hear from our business owners are issues related to loitering, theft, trash around your businesses, and just the overall appearance that different issues bring to your business and how they impact your business. And then more serious things like burglaries and robberies. And we want to work with you to make sure that we're doing everything we can to assist you to prevent these types of things and solve them when they do occur, so that we can ensure that folks know that are going to come here and victimize our business owners from other communities, that there's accountability here in the city of Hyattsville for those types of behaviors, and that violent crime won't be tolerated against our business owners. I was happy to hear that this was a relationship that existed with the city of Hyattsville, and that Mr. Chandler hosts these meetings. I want to make sure that we are here present, the City of Hyattsville Police Department is present for these meetings, and that the business owners here have the opportunity to schedule individual meetings with our community action team, so that we can have an ongoing relationship with you, and that you don't have to wait for these meetings for pressing matters, and that we can help you. Our community action team offers residential and commercial security surveys. So what that means is that if you have issues going on, even if you don't have any issues, and you just want someone from our community action team to come out and meet with you and take a look at your business and security cameras and lighting, and we can give you feedback on how you could improve security for your employees, your customers, and yourself. We also have we may have agreements with some of you. We have agreements with many of the businesses in the city called an owner agent agreement, which gives our department the ability to act as an agent of your property, so that in the event it's late at night and you or your manager is not present at your business, and your employees are working a register or there by themselves in the office, and our officers see something out of place, they can stop and interact as an agent of your business. For instance, if you're a commercial retail store, and during the day we have folks loitering at your door or panhandling, bothering your customers, gives our officers the ability to act on their own observations, rather than ask you to come and call us before we can act without that call. It also gives us the ability to represent you, and we'll have a legal document saying, showing that we're an agent of your property. So in the event that there's an arrest made, or there's something where there's a case ends up in court, you don't have to stop what you're doing and stop running your business to come to court as a witness. Our officers can represent you as an agent of your property and handle those matters in court. I would like to introduce the Special Services Commander who oversees our community action team, very briefly, Acting Lieutenant Scott Ratty, and who has his community action team there with him in the office today. Lieutenant Ratty.
Good afternoon. I'm Acting Lieutenant Ratty. I'm the commander of the Special Services Division, which includes the Community Action Team. I have two members of that team. I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you. It's possible that you all may be familiar with them already, but nice to meet everyone, and look forward to hearing from you all if there's anything we could do to help you out.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Acting Sergeant Chris Evans, the supervisor of the Community Action Team. Primary role is to work together with the businesses and between the business and the police department, be that liaison, and assist you and your business with whatever needs or communications that we can help you with, quality of life issues that we can help you with as well. to make your business, your patrons welcome to the city. And I'll introduce Officer Matthews.
Hello, I'm Officer Matthews. I work alongside Lieutenant Ratty and Sergeant Evans and Nolan.
Thank you very much. We're extremely proud of the work that our community action team does. We actually have 5 positions budgeted on our community action team. We are beefing up staffing. We've seen a significant improvement in our staffing over the last couple of months, and we hope to get that team fully staffed so that we can increase the amount of services and the accessibility for you and as business owners and the entire community to the services that we're offering here. Lieutenant Ratty, if you could just let our partners here know how they could best reach the community action team in the event that they would like to set up one of these security surveys and or just have a conversation.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do, you could call our station at 301-985-5060 and ask for a member of the community action team that could get to us. But I also have an email for Sergeant Evans, if you have a moment to write that down. And that email is C as in Chris, Evans, EVANS @Hyattsville.org. If you reach out to him as a supervisor, we'll ensure that that message gets followed up on.
Can someone
Thank
put
you.
it in?
We can put it in the chat.
Yeah, well, yes, sir. We could put that in the chat. And Chief already took care of that. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Absolutely. We sincerely
really-
appreciate the opportunity to come today and speak to everyone. We were looking forward to it. And hopefully we can get this message out much broader, but thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. We're really happy to hear about the wonderful work you're doing. Thank you. All right. So yes, thanks someone for putting those numbers and emails in the chat, Chief Towers. Now I'd like to introduce Patrick Pashal. Patrick is our employee in-house who's managing the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds, and he will be giving an overview of what those funds look like and how this applies to you all in the business community. So Patrick, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to do a brief presentation here. I'm going to try to go pretty quickly because we'll have an opportunity for further discussion later in the session. And also, of course, folks can connect with me directly in a variety of ways, and I will have that information at the end of the presentation. But I asked the Community and Economic Development team for a few minutes at the Business Roundtable because we're conducting an outreach effort right now to hear from the community about the ways in which we can use the rescue plan for emergency relief programs. There will be other opportunities, and we'll get into it in a few moments here about broader, more structural community programs and mitigation efforts. But right now, the effort that the city is undertaking is to hear from the business community, the nonprofit community, and individuals about where emergency relief needs are, so that the council can allocate funds this spring and get applications out the door for emergency relief, and then we'll later come back to look at longer term solutions. So I'm going to give just a brief overview of the rescue plan and some of the most relevant categories for emergency relief, and then give some contact information, and we'll have discussion later. So the rescue plan was passed in March of 2021. That's 1 year ago. That's midway through the pandemic so far, with a $1.9 trillion fund to address various impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of us received $1,400 per person last summer in direct payments from the federal government. There was an expanded child tax credit increase, an expanded earned income tax credit for those without children, unemployment benefits, and more that were very popular provisions and really helped a lot of people. But there were also $350 billion that was allocated toward states, counties, local jurisdictions, including $176 million for Prince George's County. And across the state, what they call NEUs, that these are non-entitlement units, they're jurisdictions with fewer than 50,000 residents. The state had a $529 million allocation across the state. And here in Prince George's County, we have 27 municipalities, which were awarded a total of $164 million. And these were done based on a complex calculation established by the federal government, by the way. And Hyattsville was awarded 17.9 million. And for all of the jurisdictions, these payments come in two what they call tranches. The first one was received last summer, $8.9 million, and the second payment is coming in summer of 2022. And that's true for all of the entities, counties, states, et cetera. Everyone must allocate all of the funds by the end of 2024 and spend all of the funds by the end of 2026. And there are a number of areas in the law that identify what are eligible expenses. But before we get into that, I just want to go over the funding objectives. So there are 4 clear explicit funding objectives in the law. They are to support the COVID-19 response efforts, to replace lost public sector revenue. But really, primarily, it's about economic stabilization for households and businesses and addressing the systemic public health and economic challenges moving forward. This is looking at existing disparities that were there before that were exacerbated by the pandemic and how to have longer term solutions for them. So expenditure category 1 is public health, and this is a lot of the stuff that you might expect. It is vaccination programs, medical expenses, testing, contact tracing, PPE, various types of putting plastic up and those sorts of things, ventilation improvements, really everything associated with trying to end or mitigate the impact of the pandemic. Next up is expenditure category 2. These are the negative economic impacts of the pandemic, and this is really is where you're going to see the most impact for small businesses. This section is about getting cash in the pockets of the people who need it, and that includes small businesses, disproportionately impacted businesses, explicitly including, for example, the tourism, hospitality sectors, but also if we can, establish either based on business industry or geographic or individual financial hardship, that there are other business categories that are eligible as well. This is also a category that's designed to assist individual workers and families. This is where emergency assistance such as food, housing, utility bill assistance, and that sort of thing will come from. And this area also includes the ability to rebuild public sector capacity to pre-pandemic levels and slightly above. And the third category that I'm going to go a little bit more detail in right now is the services to disproportionately impacted communities. And this is really where there's an explicit focus on equity in the law, serving either economically disadvantaged or racial and ethnic minority households, businesses, environments, with an understanding that people who were already somehow experiencing disparities in our communities had an exacerbating effect, a multiplying effect when the pandemic hit and things shut down. So this is a broad area that allows a lot of opportunity for reinvestment back into our communities directly, as well as through new programs that we can establish to support the communities. There are a number of other eligible spending categories that I'm not going to get into too much detail in this presentation on, replacing public sector revenue loss, premium pay for essential workers, funds availability for water and sewer infrastructure, and expanding broadband infrastructure that does include eligibility for public Wi-Fi networks. And if you want to see more detail about these other areas, there's a presentation that was done to the City Council on December 20th that goes into a little more detail in each of these areas. But for now, we're really focused on what are the areas that individuals and businesses and nonprofits need assistance in, so that the City Council can take that information and digest it, and articulate what some of these relief programs might look like for us. So this doesn't just mean, oh, we need money. We know that folks need money, and we're looking at ways to provide direct relief. We need to hear more about what are the kinds of financial hardships you experience, whether that's because you had to close down, or because your supplier costs have increased, or because your employee costs have increased, or your PPE costs have increased. Really give us a sense of what those needs are. Primarily prospectively, looking forward is going to be some of the easier ways to distribute some of these funds. And the ways to leave that feedback are many ways. So one of the easiest ways is to go to hyattsville.org/rescue plan and fill out the form that's there. We've received a number of small business requests for support through there. You can also leave a voicemail All of these are English and Spanish options. You can attend a public hearing or award meeting. Responses are anonymous. However, if you fill out the form on the website, we do have an opportunity for you to leave your name and number for me to just contact you individually. If I have follow-up questions, that's not going to be information that's publicly shared, and it's optional on those responses. So, I'll just say, please review the resources available at hyattsville.org/rescue plan. You'll find on there my contact information, which is also on this slide here, my direct telephone number. ARPA@hyattsville.org is the easiest way to contact me. There are links to this slideshow, other slideshows, state and county resources, federal resources, etc. on the website hyattsville.org/rescue plan. Just in terms of timing and timeline, our expectation is we have a public hearing scheduled for March 7th with the City Council, where we'll synthesize the feedback that we've heard from the community and present that to the council. And at that public hearing, we'll then ask for the community to give feedback around where the council should prioritize. And the council will have a discussion that evening. And then at a future council meeting, they'll make an actual allocation for these emergency relief funds. And we as city staff will work as quickly as we can to get those applications out into the community. So I'll go ahead and stop here. And I'm not sure, Dory or Jim, if y'all wanted to do some discussion now, or if you wanted to save that for breakout groups at a later time.
I do have one question. I think we have a minute or so to take. It is, if someone has already submitted information or ideas about the use of the money, will they get a confirmation that their recommendation was received?
As a general matter, we're not providing confirmations to every response. We're receiving them via email, voicemail, via the web form, via Dropbox in the park. And so there are many ways. If you have a concern about whether your feedback was received, feel free to call me or email me. I'm always happy to individually confirm for you. We've received a few hundred responses so far, and that makes me really happy. And I want to see at least a few hundred more before the end of this, because the council is really clearly dedicated to participatory budgeting. And this is one of the ways in which they're looking to do that. So no, we are not planning to send an individual response to every query that we get. But if you want to just make sure, then I'm absolutely happy to check in for you. And I see the question here from Councilmember Wazak as well, to what to do if someone wants to flesh out an idea that they've already submitted. So you're not gonna you don't have just one bite at the apple. If you submit an idea and it's only partially fleshed out and you have further thoughts on it, feel free to submit another one. If you have an idea at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can drop it in to drop it in email or drop it in the form. That's fine. If you think you've got an idea, but you're just not sure if it's going to work out, or you're not sure if it's eligible, or let's talk about it. Then call me directly, email me. Let's set up a time. My whole job is to get us to yes. My job is to get us to defining ways that we can get support programs to be considered eligible. And then the council has the difficult task of prioritizing and allocating those funds for community distribution.
Thank you. And for everyone, Patrick will be sticking around in our Wonder networking space after the close of this meeting. I will be explaining more details about that in just a few minutes. But thank you so much, Patrick, for that great overview. Jim, I would say the floor is yours to share some development updates, and I will share the slides.
I appreciate it. And Patrick, thank you. That was terrific. And, Patrick and I had a lot of discussions, as he said, with a lot of staff about ARPA, clarification, trying to figure out where to fit pieces. And so I think it's a bit of an evolving process, but we are working hard to figure out how to best, invest this money into the priorities that the community has articulated. It sort of rolls into two of the topics that we're going to be discussing. One is, as you're aware, the city concluded a business retention and expansion planned a few months ago. And obviously there's a lot in there to unpack in terms of investing resources, both in programming and personnel projects. And so we're taking a look to see how we can accelerate some of those recommendations in the BRE, because they're, I think to some extent it's all needed. Certainly matching BRE strategies up with what is fundable through ARPA. And we're doing some of that sorting on our end. One of the, I guess, more immediate pieces is was recommended in the BRE, and we think at this point is can be funded through ARPA, is small business administrator, which in the short term will be assisting Patrick and I in administering any ARPA-related grant funds for businesses. We don't have an exact timetable on that. That's sort of the part of the package that Patrick was referring to. But having a dedicated resource that can work with businesses on developing those applications, and certainly any other application resources that are available either through SBA or county, because it is, as well as we attempted to put together some resources and reallocate personnel to be able to service that area throughout the pandemic. The reality is you need a dedicated resource. And so our HR department is going to be putting that position description on the street, I think next week. And so we're looking to fill that quickly. And then we will have a dedicated resource available to assist with I think a lot of the areas that we tend to juggle among existing staff. And the other piece of that is, figuring out what parts of the BRE we may be able to, rather than a 3 or 4 year term, be able to push into the next 18 to 24 months. And certainly cognizant that we have ARPA funds, we're going to try to leverage those as best we can. And so playing a little bit of matchmaker on what fits within that box is a lot of the time and effort we're going to be spending over the next weeks and months. The other piece that I think is relevant for businesses, and some of the folks who are here with us have done this in the past. Every 5 years, the city updates its sustainability plan. And our last effort was in 2016, which established the 2017 plan, which runs through the early part of this year and then effectively concludes. And so we, this late spring, are going to be securing some technical expertise and then starting a stakeholder review process. And we'll typically have 30 to 50 in-person interviews, acknowledging that may need to be virtual this year, but it's a group of individuals. They may be elected officials, they may be business owners, they may be property owners, they may be nonprofits. We try as best we can to diversify that group to identify common issues, points of interest, priorities. And that folds into a community planning process that we'll conduct this fall. We typically have a couple of different sessions. We've done exclusively live sessions in the past. Our hope is we can structure these in a way that allows for some in-person, trying to schedule around at times of the year where weather's a little bit more cooperative, because we do think it's important to be able to have an in-person event or events, but obviously circumstances are going to dictate whether we can keep it exclusively in person or whether or not we'll need to mesh that with some sort of hybrid in-person virtual session. And the other is looking to continue to diversify participation. I think, not just in our sustainability planning efforts, but all of our planning efforts, diversifying those participating in the process is an area of focus. And so we're trying to get creative in how we're introducing those opportunities to interact with the public. And so we have some creative ideas that we're fleshing out, but certainly our goal would be to have that community process run throughout the balance of this calendar year, and submit to our city council a plan sometime in spring as a draft and have that plan adopted in June of 2023, which is generally consistent with how we've run these planning processes in the past. For those that are involved, this past plan, we conducted an annual update to the plan where generally every August we'll report out to the council progress, certainly to hold ourselves accountable for executing the plan, but also reintroducing those ideas that we spent a considerable time and effort prioritizing to keep them front and center and ensure that the city is delivering on the priorities that were articulated through this process. So be on the lookout for more of that. Certainly we'll start advertising opportunities for engagement. Certainly if any folks have any questions or want to participate, we'll introduce those opportunities. We do have a breakout session later on. So if you know that you'd like to participate either as a stakeholder or a volunteer, let us know. Dory will be keeping track of that. And when it's time to start that process, she'll reach out to you to get you involved. So that is my spiel. At this point, we're going to move forward to Dory. Dory is going to do a quick little breakout on a couple of our economic development programs.
Thank you so much, Jim. Yes, so I will just give a fast and quick overview of 2 grant programs that we have, we host through the city. And based on the survey that we ran really quick earlier, it seems that with our audience today, there's kind of a mixed group understanding of these 2 grants. So I just would like to run through them in more detail. I will also be available in the breakout space after in case you have particular questions. But the first grant that I want to talk to you about is called the Commercial Facade Improvement Grant. We often refer to it as CFI. This is a dollar-for-dollar matching grant within the range of $5,000 to $50,000. And what it supports is basically improvements to an exterior facade of a building. This can be anything from repainting your building, shutters, gutters, windows, doors, lighting, and signage. And we are really, pleased with how this program has resulted in making a more inviting and wonderful downtown in the Route 1 corridor, and also now in areas in UTC, for example. So this has been, I think, a very successful program so far, and we'd love to have more applicants. This grant cycle will open again around June. We'll have more details about that. But we want you to, in the meantime, if you are thinking about applying for your business, take a look at this guidebook. There is, first of all, a guidebook on what kinds of things you could do, everything from different signage styles to lighting, because, these small improvements really make a big impression on the presentability of your business to the general public. On our website, there is also a story map of businesses who have received this grant in the past and what they have done with it to improve their own facade. And those are just some really cool examples to check out. You can even take yourself on a little walking tour. We'll be updating this with our most recent grantees shortly in the next few weeks. And the second grant that I'd like to tell you about is our Corridor Investment Program grant, CIP. This one is a little bit newer. And this is a funding opportunity for both private and nonprofit partners in the community who want to do one of 3 things: either a placemaking project, a programming initiative, or a business development strategy. You can see here they're in various funding amounts. Programming is up to $1,500, placemaking $2,500, and business development $5,000. This cycle will also open this summer. And, to walk people through the application process, we might hold some kind of other info session on this so that you understand, what is involved in the application. But, there is some confusion because technically the placemaking grant could be used for some exterior improvements of your building. For example, planter boxes outside, seating or signage. So there's a little bit of overlap, but CFI is really more about those kind of larger scale improvements that you're looking to make in your building. So those are the overview about the 2 grants. I see there's a couple of questions in the chat. Is it still true that nonprofits are not allowed to apply to CFI? Jim, could you answer that? I believe this is for our private partners still only, is that right?
So it depends. So it has to be for a commercial property. I think we need to get into some specifics on the eligibility. So if you have any questions about your specific property, let us know, and we'll be able to flush it out a little bit.
And there's a second question. Someone told that their facade improvement grant does not cover painting. Marshall, I think, painting on the exterior as part of a larger scale improvement should be covered. I'm not familiar with your application, but if you have further questions, if you were looking to reapply, do send me an email. I'll put my information in the chat. All right. And I see there's a couple things from the chat. Okay, there's some more information. Thanks, Taylor. Yeah, so that's all from my side. Like I said, I'll be available in our space on Wonder. I'll explain how you enter that in just a moment. But I would like to hand the floor over to Taylor Roby, our city planner, who will be sharing some of the development updates that the city has going on. Taylor, you're on the floor.
Thanks, Dory. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to walk through 3 exciting projects that are going to come online relatively soon within the city. The first of which is the Rhode Island Trolley Trail. This I'm particularly excited about as a cyclist, but it'll provide connection between the Rhode Island Trolley Trail and the Anacostia Tributary Trail, which is down near Armentrout Drive. The solicitation period ended in November of 2021 for this. We're expecting bid selection sometime in March of this year. Construction will begin sometime in the spring. They're anticipating the project will take about 18 months, and we will see completion of this project potentially in fall of 2023. The next project we're going to talk about is the Canvas Apartments project. If you're not familiar, this is at 5300 Baltimore Avenue. It's going to be a mixed-use project with a significant amount of ground floor retail and about 284 apartments, as well as a parking structure. We're anticipating that construction will begin on that project in March of this year, and the project will be complete sometime in the fall of 2023. And then the last project I'm going to talk about is Riverfront at West Hyattsville. So this project is happening in 2 parts. We have the townhome portion and then the multifamily portion. The townhome portion is already under construction, as I'm sure you're aware. And the multifamily building portion, which will include 2 multifamily buildings. The first multifamily building has been approved, and we're anticipating construction to begin in 2022. The second multifamily building has not been submitted and approved yet, but we're anticipating delivery on those projects by 2024. So we're really excited about that, and happy to answer any questions.
So I think we've got one question, Taylor, in the Q&A. The trolley trail project, when will the sidewalk connection on the west side of Route 1 be completed?
I can jump in there. So they're being funded out of 2 different state highway project funding mechanisms. And so how it will work is, as the project is concluding on the east side, then SHA will initiate the sidewalk project on the west side. And the reason is, as they're performing the majority of work on the northbound side of the street, that travel lane will be partially closed. And so all of the traffic will be using the existing southbound lane. And so for, for safety purposes, in part, they'll need to keep that as is, as they're wrapping up punch list items on the east side or the northbound side, the side the trail is on. They'll start with construction on the west side, which will be limited to creation of a sidewalk that will connect Melrose Park, that area, and will run northbound to the existing sidewalk along the west side of Rhode Island Avenue.
We've got another question. Jim, can you share how we might take street parking into account during the construction project?
This is for Rhode Island Avenue, I assume we're talking about. Yes. So the street parking that is there, it's not been specified by State Highway yet, because they're still going through the procurement process. What is likely to happen is the on-street parking that is permitted on the southbound side would be suspended while any northbound lanes are suspended. So I know there is an area where I think maybe 4 or 5 vehicles, you're able to park on the 4802 section of Rhode Island Avenue. With both those lanes needing to support north-south vehicle traffic. SHA hasn't stated to the city that the parking will be suspended, but our assumption is those spaces would need to be suspended during a portion of the work. And just sort of another point, the reason SHA is proposing temporary closure of the northbound lane is actually to speed up the construction cycle for the project. If they left both northbound and southbound lanes open, the duration of the construction would be approximately 4 to 5 months longer than what they're proposing currently.
Thank you both. I think that there were no further questions in the chat at the moment. Jim and Taylor will also be available in our networking session, which I would like to tell you about now. So here's our contact information. This will be included in the slides that are accessible to you all. So feel free to reach us, with further questions or comments about anything that was discussed today. So Zoom webinar doesn't allow for a breakout room in the same way that a normal Zoom meeting will. So we're going to try something new. The online, space does not lend itself so well to human interaction. But as multiple members have said in today's call, we really do want to hear from you, and we would like to have a chance to engage with you. So I am dropping right now a link in the chat to a space called Wonder. Wonder is basically an online network space. Please open this link in your browser, but do not join quite yet. We will have feedback from your sound if you do that. So when you go into Wonder, it will look like this. It will be a space. It's a nice little outdoor patio, quote unquote. Your little bubble will appear after you turn your camera on. So again, please exit when we close the Zoom meeting. Then you will be enabled to turn on your camera and microphone for Wonder. So there again is the link. Click on it, open it in your browser. There are 4 discussion spaces, and you can basically move your little bubble into the one that you would like to join. I will be over here in the grant section for quarter investment. Jim should be around the BRE area. Patrick will be online for the ARPA comments. And if there's any other feedback from our Love Local campaign, I can also cover this area. Basically, when your bubble gets close to someone, that allows you to start talking to them. Yes, we have a remaining around 15 minutes. if you'd like to meet us in the space online and carry on a couple of conversation or unanswered questions. Yes, so one more time, that's me over here, Doria Estrada in the corridor investment, Jim in the BRE space, Patrick down here in the ARPA funds, and I will also kind of toggle down to the Love Local campaign in case there's any feedback about that. And you don't have to join one of these spaces. You're also welcome just to chat with your neighbors. If there's another business person online who you've been waiting to meet, you know, you can also just gather anywhere you like on the space. So, all right. So everyone, please, you know, open that link in your browser now before we close the meeting. So that is all from my side. Jim, Taylor, any other closing comments before we end this meeting?
You know, and thank you, Dory. Certainly, you know, appreciative of everyone attending today. You know, certainly we do our best to try to promote these sessions. We hold them 3 times a year. We don't have a date for the next session, but it'll likely be sometime in late May. We try to hold a session as the budget is sort of finishing up. And then we jump to a fall session. So pacing wise, we tend to get a pretty good attendance that way. But certainly as you come across topics that you might be interested in, and you know some other businesses might be interested, let us know. It does take some time to be able to find appropriate speakers with that are subject matter experts. So, but certainly the more advanced notice we can get on a particular topic gives us adequate time to put a program together. But certainly hope you enjoy the breakout spaces. Give us some feedback. Again, trying to be creative in a virtual environment, and we know everyone's sick of Zoom meetings, so try and do something a little bit different, but curious to get some feedback. But thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you again to Jack for the presentation, and we will see you on Wonder in just a moment. Thank you.